Good afternoon, dear students. We start our lecture. Good afternoon. Our today's topic is formation and development of the Russian Empire in the 18th century. A very interesting topic to learn, and we should discuss following questions. First question is devoted to Peter I's reforms. The second question is devoted to palace revolutions of the second quarter of the 18th century. The third question is devoted to the educated Catherine II's absolutism. And the fourth question is devoted to Paul I's government. Paul I's government. So, let's start. Our literature for today, as usual, is the Cambridge History of Russia, Volume 2, pages 67, 77, pages 489, 503. And first of all, I'd like to tell you some words about Peter I, under nickname the Great. So, Peter I the Great was born in 1672 in Moscow and died in 1725 in St. Petersburg. He was a Moscow Tsar since 1682 from Romanov's dynasty, and he was the first emperor of the Russia since 1721. In the Russian historiography, it is considered one of the most outstanding statesmen who defined the direction of development of Russia in the 18th century. Peter I is recognized as the greatest reformer among Russian rulers. And looking at him, you can imagine that he was a very interesting governor of Russia, a very interesting Tsar of Russia. He was the first emperor. His view was outstanding, and he was a very remarkable person. So, talking about Peter's identity, or Peter's identity, let's imagine that he was a person of very high growth, 2 meters and 4 centimeters. And still, the childhood Peter struck people with beauty and vivacity of the person and a figure. Here is the signature of Russian Tsar Peter. He preferred signature of Peter in Latin language. He differed in universal abilities and enormous working capacity. He owned 12 professions. He was a captain, the doctor. He was a very qualified medician, dentist, etc. And he was a carpenter. He got nickname among foreigners as a Tsar Carpenter. Until the end of his life, he showed himself a model of service to the state in practice executing a military duty. Let's have a look at his family of Peter I. In 1676-1689, after the Tsar Alexei Mikhailovich, reigned Fyodor Alexeyevich, a son of Miloslavskaya, a second wife of Alexei Mikhailovich. He ruled from 1676 up to 1682, and then there came Troye Tsarstve, a triple tsardom. So, triple tsardom consists of 3 Russian tsars, juvenile tsars Ivan and Peter, and Tsarevna Sofia. You can see them in following order: On the left side of our slide, Fyodor Alexeyevich is located, then Ivan Alexeyevich, then Peter Alexeyevich, and Tsarevna Sofia. Peter I's youth was rather interesting. In Sofia's government, Peter I with mother lived in the villages of Preobrazhenskaya, located close to Moscow, Kolomna, and Semenovsky, where he got passion to military science and shipbuilding. Very often, Peter ran away to the German settlement where foreigners lodged and communicated with them in Moscow. The identity of future reformer was so put. What were prerequisites of reforms of Peter I? First of all, it was a leg of Russia in the social and economic, military and cultural relation from the Western European countries. The second prerequisite was active and strong-willed activity of Peter I, orientation on transformations in the country. The third reason and prerequisite was Peter I's trip to Europe, so-called Great Embassy, which took place in 1697-1698. And the last prerequisite was the previous development of the country in the 17th century, attempts of reforms of Tsars Alexei Mikhailovich and Fyodor Alexeyevich. So, all the prerequisites, all the reasons of reforms of Peter I led him to awareness of need of reforms with use of useful European experience. What do we know about the Great Embassy of Tsar Peter? Great Embassy took place in Europe from 1697 up to 1698. And in March of 1697, the Great Embassy was sent to Western Europe from Livland or Livlandia. In total, the embassy included about 250 people, among whom there was a Tsar. For the first time, a Russian Tsar undertook a travel out of borders of state. By the way, an interesting fact from the history of Russia that Peter I traveled through Europe under false name. His name in this trip was Peter Mikhailov, an officer of Preobrazhensky regiment. Peter visited Riga, Königsberg, Brandenburg, Courland, England, Austria. The visit to Venice and to the Pope was planned. The embassy enlisted several hundreds of experts to Russia on ship business, bought the military and other equipment. There is a picture illustrated appearance of young Russian Tsar Peter I at this slide. Northern War. The Azov campaigns, which were undertaken in 1695 and 1696, were the first attempt of Peter I to break through by the southern sea boundaries. The first Azov campaign terminated in failure as Russians had no fleet. All winter and spring of 1696 near Voronezh, construction of the fleet was conducted, and only in the second campaign, Russians possessing the fleet blocked from the sea fortress Azov, Turkish fortress Azov. The Turkish garrison capitulated. However, Azov was only a small reversal before big business. And big business for Peter I was Northern War with Sweden. Northern War lasted from 1700 up to 1721. What was the beginning of Northern War? In the fall of 1700, the Russian troops besieged Fortress Narva, were totally beaten by Swedes, who were ordered to the Swedish king Karl XII. So it was defeat, but however this confusion did not confuse Peter, and he with redoubled zeal undertook reorganization and reconstruction of Russian army, and it bore fruit. During the period from 1701 to 1704, the Russian troops, in a number of battles, inflicted defeat over the Swedish troops and occupied territories around the Gulf of Finland. In 1703, the cities of Ols and Kaporia were taken. On Kotlin Island, powerful naval fortress Kronstadt was constructed. In 1704 were taken Delft, Tartu, nowadays Tartu, Ivangorod and Narva. St. Petersburg. As you do know, St. Petersburg is one of the most picturesque cities of Europe and Russia. St. Petersburg is known as the second capital of Russia. St. Petersburg was the capital of Russian state from 1714 up to 1918. Date of the foundation of St. Petersburg is considered as the 16th of May of 1703. This afternoon, a bookmark with the Tsar reformer of the Peter and Paul Fortress, the first building of the city in the mouth of Neva River on the higher island, is dated. Peter I gave the city the name devoted to his patron, to his saint patron in the sky, to the Saint Apostle Peter. Peter I attached to the new city an important strategic importance for providing the waterway from Russia to Western Europe. So, what was the need to foundate a new city? The main aim to foundate St. Petersburg is to provide a very short naval road from Russia to Western Europe, and the shortest naval road was through Baltic Sea to Western Europe. Poltava Fight. Poltava Fight was the most remarkable battle during the Northern War with Sweden, and the Poltava battle, which was taking place in July of 1709. Remember, July 1709, Poltava Fight took place. Poltava Fight was the decisive battle which changed the ratio of warring parties between Russian troops and Swedish troops. The Ukrainian hetman Ivan Mazepa, on the eve of the Poltava battle, conducted secret negotiations with Poles and Swedes. He tried to get to himself conditions better. The circumstances preceding Ivan Stepanovich Mazepa's death were a natural continuation of his life. The church anathema was imposed on Mazepa for treachery. He was deprived of all awards. Its effigy was hung up in Glukhov instead of Mazepa. Cossacks prepared his effigy, and long still people passing by the gallows spat in the wreck hetman, showing so to his personality the full disrespect. So Mazepa was the most well-known traitor in Russian history. Mazepa in Bender in 1709, right after the Poltava fight, died. Where now its grave precisely will not tell nobody anymore. The Gangud battle, the next naval battle of the Northern War, the sea battle which took place on July of 27 of 1714 at the Cape of Gangud in the Baltic Sea between the Russian and Swedish fleet. Naval victory of the Russian fleet, the first in the history of Russia. For this fight, Peter I was made in Vice Admirals, so he got title of Vice Admiral. The next battle, naval battle, Grangam Battle. It was the sea battle which happened on July 27 of 1720 in the Baltic Sea. About the islet of Grangam was the last large battle of Navan War, and the end of undivided Swedish influence on the Baltic Sea, and the statement of Russia on it became a result of this battle. And you can see a picture illustrated as two naval battles, Battle of Grangam and Battle at Gungood. So two battles were the apogee of significance and powerful Russian fleet, Russian navy. And you can imagine that Russia never had powerful navy before. Russia had never had any navy before. What were war results? On August the 30th of 1721, between Russia and Sweden, the Nystadt Peace Treaty was signed, which ended 20 years' war. Russia received an entry in the Baltic Sea, attached considerable territories. Russia became the great European power. In commemoration of war, on October 22nd of 1721, Peter accepted the title of the Father of Motherland and all the Russia's Emperor, Peter the Great. So, Peter, in 1721, just remember, in 1721, Peter adopted a new title of all the Russian Emperor. So, Russia was transformed into Russian Empire. Peter provided during his life several reforms. The most remarkable of them were regional reform. It took place in 1708-1715. Regional reform for the purpose of strengthening of the power vertical was undertaken. In 1708, the country was divided into 8 provinces. Provinces began to be divided into 50 provinces and provinces on districts. Reforms of army and the fleet, Russian Navy. In 1699, the general recruitment is made. The recruit system allowed to create mass and regular army in short terms. Foreigners in army were not taken. As a result of transformations, the strong regular army and powerful navy, which earlier Russia just did not have, was created. And you can imagine the level of transformation looking at this slide. On the left ward of this slide, you can see shooters of the Ivan the Terrible time, and on the right side of the slide, you can see a soldier of Peter I, equipped with the military ammunition and taking a rifle in his hand. Peter the Great's transformations included monetary reform. On a foreign sample began to mint gold chervonets, gold ruble, subsequently refused them in favor of a gold coin invented in 2 rubles. Count began to be kept for rubles and kopecks. A reform of state administration, 12 boards, predecessors of future ministries, are created. Unlike orders of function and a field of activity of each board were strictly differentiated, and the relations in the board were under construction of principle of collective leadership of decisions. In 1699, instead of seigneurial Duma, Venia office, a consultation of ministries, the supreme body in the sphere of legislation of the state administration and court is entered. So Peter greatly transformed all the system of state administration in Russia. And new orders and new bodies of power were created, and the most remarkable of them was Senate and boards. Reforms in education were very interesting also. On the 14th of January in 1700 in Moscow, the School of Mathematical and Navigation Sciences was opened. In 1701-1721, artillery, engineering, and medical schools in Moscow, engineering school and Sea Naval Academy in St. Petersburg, mountain schools at the Orleans and Ural plants were opened. In 1705, Russia's first gymnasium was opened. In 1724, the St. Petersburg Academy of Sciences is founded in St. Petersburg. And you can see at this slide a building of Russian St. Petersburg Academy of Sciences at the Neva embankment. According to the order of the Emperor Peter I, Russian Academy of Sciences was opened. Transformations to the industries and trade. The problem of absence of the qualified masters is solved. In Siberia, in 1704, the Russia's first silver plant was constructed. In the Urals in 1723, the largest ironworks plant in Russia is Prud. All types of industry developed. So Urals region became the most powerful region in a sphere of ironworks industry. In general, Peter's policy in trade can be characterized as the protectionism, consisting in support of domestic production and establishment of increased taxes on import production. In 1724, the protective customs tariff was ended. Thus, at Peter I, the basis of the Russian industry, therefore in the middle of the 18th century, Russia came out on the top of rules on production of goods was necessary. What was the social policy of Peter I? According to Decree of Education of 1706, seigneurial children without fail have to receive either initial school or house education. Decree on male entail of 1714. The landowner, having sons, could bequeath their property only to one of them at his choice. Table of Ranks of 1721. Division of military, civil, and court service onto 14 ranks. The career of the person began to depend first of all not on his origin, from his depending to nobility, and on achievements in public service. Decree on the succession to the throne on February the 5th of 1722, due to the lack of a successor, Peter I decided to issue the order on succession to the throne, in which the reserves the right to appoint to itself a successor. What should be said about culture of Russia during Peter's era? Cultural way of Western Europe became a role model. The bird was changed for a week, Russian into German. Secular education institutions began to appear. The special decree of the Tsar in 1718 and the assemblies represented a communication form new to Russia between people. On assemblies, noblemen danced and freely communicated, unlike former feasts and the right to acquisition of secular skills. Youth is made honest mirror. There was the first Russian newspaper, Vedomosti. During the time of Peter I in 1703, the first book in Russian with the Arab figures appeared. In 1710, Peter approved the new alphabet with the simplified tracing of letters. They were changed in Russia, which included 4,500 new words borrowed from the European languages. Peter I changed the beginning of chronology since the so-called Byzantine era from Adam's creation to AD, New Year entered a holiday, like in Western Europe. Palace revolutions. What should we know about palace revolutions? A very complicated period in Russian history of 18th century. Under the chapter about heritage of the throne issued by Peter I in 1722, the reigning monarch himself elected successor of him. But on January 28 of 1725, Peter died without having called the successor. Meanwhile, after the death of the Tsarevich Peter, the son Peter I from Catherine I, and the first emperor, there is no son left. The dynastic situation was tangled. Palace revolution, the shift of the ruling court group which is in power and changed by its older group. Palace revolutions can as a message not to conduct to a sessional change of state policy. Era of palace revolutions in Russia as a rule, it is dated from 1725 to 1762, etc. covers the period from Peter I's death prior to accession to the throne of Catherine II. Commission of palace revolutions was facilitated by lack of legislatively established exact order of succession to the throne. Let's have a look to the scheme of Romanov dynasty in 1725. As you remember, Peter I had brother Ivan VI. Peter I had one son, Alexei. He died, and Peter I had his grandson, Peter, a future Peter II, Russian emperor. Peter had several daughters, Anne and Elizabeth, and Ivan VI had three daughters, Catherine, Anna, and Praskovia. So, dynastic choice was very complicated for the persons who were very close to Peter I, Russian emperor, after his death. It was very hard to elect a new Russian emperor. What was dynastic choice of 1725? Russian noblemen were forced to choose between two persons, Tsarevich Peter Alexeyevich, a grandson of Peter I, and his wife, Empress Catherine Alexeyevna. Applicants to a throne were the 12-year-old grandson of Peter and Empress Catherine. Everyone had pluses and minuses. For Peter, there was a tradition. He is the only man in Romanov's dynasty. And Tsarevich Peter was very dangerous for some noblemen from Peter I's circle, close circle. Peter I's colleagues were afraid to build to a throne the son of Tsarevich Alexei, sentenced by them to death. So, in this sense of view, Peter Alexeyevich was very dangerous for them as a possible Russian emperor. The main supporter of Catherine II was Alexander Menshikov. Why Menshikov supported Catherine? He was one of the judges in the matter of Tsarevich Alexei, and it as well as Catherine was a low sort of persons. The queen was obliged to him by acquaintance to Peter I. Catherine II accession to Russian throne. For lack of clearly and expressed will of the sovereign, the Senate had to accept the decision of the succession to a throne. At the crucial moment, the Senate was surrounded by the guard brought by Menshikov. To the conference, all officers were also demanded to build to a throne the monarch's Empress Catherine II. So it was the first palace revolt in Russia. First palace revolt in Russia. What was Catherine I's government? Catherine I did not understand in public affairs. Therefore, she created Supreme Privy Council, which solved all major questions, or Supreme Secret Council, another name of this state body. Powers of the Senate were cut down. It began to be called not ruling, but High Senate. However, did not limit the power of the Empress of the Supreme Privy Council. What was the will of Catherine II? In May of 1727, Catherine I died at the age of 43 years. Before her death, she made the will, testament, having disposed of the fate of the throne. What was the testament of Catherine I? The adoptive grandson of Catherine I was called the successor of throne, Tsarevich Peter Alexeyevich, with descendants. Only in case of his childless death, the throne passed to the oldest daughter, Peter I and Catherine Anna and her descendants, and in case of their childless death, to the second daughter, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth was only the third in line of descendants of Catherine I. Dictated the will to Catherine Menshikov. The lightest Prince Alexander Menshikov, conceived to become related with the imperial surname, having built to a throne, 12-year-old Peter, and having given out to it the 16-year-old daughter of Menshikov, Maria. So Maria has to be married with Peter II, and in this case Menshikov became a relative of imperial family. Menshikov lodged the young Tsarevich himself in the house and literally on a step did not release it from itself. So, Menshikov tried to control every step of young Russian Emperor, Peter II. Here is a portrait of Peter II and Alexander Danilovich Menshikov. With Peter II, Menshikov's accession reached the unprecedented power. He became Generalissimo, the full admiral. The announcement was planned his reign. But all this power lent only on control over the young Tsar, and therefore was extremely fragile. On Menshikov's trouble, his daughter not was pleasant to Peter II. Menshikov brought a disease. He was confined more than a month to a bed. During this time, the Tsar fell under influence of a young prince, Ivan Dolgoruki, idler and libertine. Ivan represented powerful clan of princes Dolgoruki, who were already in time to enter in Supreme Secret Council. The Tsar ceased to submit to Menshikov and even to allow it to Siberia. In September of 1727, Menshikov was deprived of all ranks and awards. He was arrested and banished to Siberia and Berezov. Withdrew all infinite riches from the lightest, including personal jewelry of daughters. In 1729, Menshikov died in exile. The same year died the destroyed bride Maria Menshikova. The sister was declared Peter II's bride, Dolgoruki Catherine. Peter II's reign. Peter II, who got a superficial education, early became the autocrat to which nobody dared to contradict, did not wish neither study nor to be engaged in public affairs, and had only a good time. He tried to spend leisure, and nothing more. Saxon Voile Lefort, the Tsar is similar to the grandfather in the respect that he holds the ground without suffering objections, also does what wants. Main hobby of Peter II there was a hunting. In 1728, the Tsar moved to Moscow from St. Petersburg. So during the time of rule of Peter II, Moscow continued to be a capital of Russia instead of St. Petersburg, around which there was a set of the woods full of the game, and Tsar for months vanished on hunting, to disappointment of the decisions of ministers and diplomats waiting for him. Historian Solovyov, Peter ran wild. His horizon was narrowed. What did happen with Peter II? In January of 1730, Peter II caught a cold. Smallpox became a complication of cold, and on January of 1730, Tsar died. Romanov's dynasty in Melny, it was stopped. At a meeting in the Supreme Secret Council, nobody even remembered Catherine I's will. What happened later? Question of the succession to the throne in 1730, after the death of Peter II. The members of Secret Supreme Council, Golitsyn, suggested to address the imperial line of the dynasty of Romanov and to enthrone one of the daughters of the Tsar Ivan V, Alexeyevich, Anna. The choice fell not on Senior Catherine, who was formerly married with the Duke Leopold Mecklenburg, known heavy temper, and on average, Anna. In 17 years, she was married for the Duke Karl and Friedrich, but right after the wedding became a widow, and lived many years in Courland, in poverty, eliciting favor at the Russian yard. Standards. What were standards? Standards were special requirements to the Russian Empress Anna Ivanovna. For example, after acceptance of the crown Russian, not to enter matrimony and not to define the successor. Always to support nowadays already founded Supreme Privy Council in 8 persons, also without this Supreme Privy Council of consent. With anybody wars not start, to the world not to conclude peace treaty. Any new taxes not to burden our faithful citizens. In notable ranks about carnal ranks, not to favor, lower to notable affairs to define nobody, and quads also we designate to regiments to be under maintaining of the Supreme Secret Council. At the nobility of the stomach and manner of honor without court not to take off. The ancestral lands of the villages not to favor. In court ranks not to make. Not to use state revenues in expense and true given to support all in not excellent favor. So standards were very cruel to the power of Russian Empress Anna Ivanovna. What was the destiny of standards? Supreme Privy Council tried to deceive Anna Ivanovna. The Prince Dolgoruki, who came to her in Mitava, submitted in the requirement to accept standards as the decision of all the people of Russia, all nobility. Anna, which is already warned by opponents of Supreme Privy Council, agreed without thoughts. It had a chance to replace hateful poor Mitava to St. Petersburg and a crown of Russian Empire. Anna arrived in Moscow on February 15 of 1730. On February 25, a group of noblemen led by Cherkassky, thanking the Empress for signing of standards, noblemen asked to call council from the highest ranks of the state finally to approve form a government. There was a skirmish between Cherkassky and Supreme Privy Council. At this moment, the Guards officers protesting the palace loudly demanded to restore autocracy. The new petition signed followed 167 noblemen. We ask to accept most gracious self-great power statehood such is, what your nice ancestors had, and said to your Imperial Majesty from Supreme Council to destroy points. Autocracy in Russia was restored. Empress Anna Ivanovna. Here is a picture illustrating the court of Anna Ivanovna. Anna was a person uneducated, limited, petty. She was interested in gossips more about life court than public affairs. Anna's era is often called as Bironovshchina, claiming that key points in Russia were taken by foreigners, led by Biron, and that Anna's government differed in exclusive cruelty. The Empress organized the yard in an old manner, with numerous clowns, fortune tellers, spongers, rough and obscene entertainments. Here is a portrait of Ernst Johann Biron. Favorite of Anna in Mitava there was a current nobleman Ernst Johann Biron. After Anna's accession he arrived to Russia, where in 1737 received the title of Duke Kurland. According to a number of historians, the youngest son of Biron was given birth by Anna. Biron's influence on the Empress was boundless. To Lades, the largest grandees found. Formerly, Biron did not hold any state posts, but without his consent, any serious issue was not resolved. Updating of Guard. After the events of 1713, Anna Ivanovna did not trust all Guards regiments. In 1731, she created a new Guards regiment, Izmailovsky. Officers of Mushketorsky companies, Izmailovsky Leib Guards of the regiment. And here is a banner of Izmailovsky Leib Guards of regiment. Two guard shelves, along with noblemen, began to recruit from peasants, expecting to deprive such weak guard of a political role. Cabinet. Cabinet consisted of several persons and included Alexei Cherkassky, Pavel Yaguzhinsky, Andrei Osterman, Artemy Volinsky. Anna created cabinet to replace dismissed Supreme Privy Council. Privy Cabinet Anna equated the signature to own, but allowed it not to trouble itself public affairs. played the leading role in the office, not the apathetic and Chancellor Prince Cherkassky, lacking initiative but vigorous and resourceful Vice-Chancellor Osterman. However, Osterman had to reckon with Biron, who watched closely that the Vice-Chancellor did not gather at his too much power. For counteraction to Osterman, Biron entered into the office Volinsky. Secret office. Not the German, but the Russian nobleman was the most terrible person of Anne's era, the chief executioner, Andrei Ushakov, heading body of political investigation, secret office. So, secret office was a very dangerous and terrible body of power in Russian Empire during the time of rule of Anna Ioannovna. It was perhaps the only department into which affairs Anna constantly penetrated personally. The secret office tortured opponents of the Mode regime and just those who, on imprudence, blurted out something unflattering about the Empress or Biron, or did not inform on the heard bad words to the address of Empress and Biron. According to Anna Ioannovna's will, Anna Ioannovna had no linear heirs. The nearest was her close relative Anna Leopoldovna, who grew up in Russia. In 1731, Anna published an unusual manifesto, Successor Throne, a Peer Child Male, which has to give rise Anna Leopoldovna. Ivan Antonovich, Emperor Ivan Antonovich. Anna Ioannovna died on October 17 of 1740 in 47 years. To her grandnephew, to Anna Leopoldovna's son, Ivan VI Antonovich was only 4 months old. Under Anna's will, regent, the passing parents of the juvenile Emperor Biron was appointed. The favorite literally forced the dying Anna to appoint him the regent. If the Empress will die without having signed the will, he even organized petition of the highest dignitaries and generals in favor of the regency. A revolution of 1740. Biron did not manage to hold hardly the good power. The favorite was hated also of Vlad and most of dignitaries. It had no support. On November of 9 of 1740, Field Marshal Minnick Нет, спасибо, вообще не нужно. Для своего расхода было. До свидания. Anna Leopoldovna was benevolent and romantic person, but it is closed and sociable and whimsical. Unexperienced in public affairs, she did not like to appear in public, limited a circle of contacts to family and few friends. Popularity of the ruler and her husband, Prince and Generalissimo Anton Ulrich Braunschweig, in the environment of the nobility and in Graz, it was extremely low. Grazmen even more often remembered about Peter the Great's daughter to the Princess Elizabeth. Tsarevna Elizabeth Petrovna. Here is a portrait of her. Name of the father Peter the Great. The series of insignificant governors awakened melancholy for the terrible emperor, which cruelty in 15 years were a little forgotten partially, and merits began to seem even more majestic. On Elizabeth, daughter of Peter, hoped as for a restoration of glory and greatness of Russia. And now, let's discuss Palace Revolution of 1741. Elizabeth's support became the Guard soldiers, feeling despite different origin, members of uniform corporation, an exclusive military castle. In Guard bottoms, it was especially strong the aspiration to sit to a throne here is at law. Coming to power of Elizabeth was wished, and diplomats of France and Sweden. They were ready to help Elizabeth, who did not have men's money. In exchange for support, France sought to achieve refusal of Russia from carried out by both Biron and Anna Leopoldovna of the pro-Austrian foreign policy. Sweden counted the territorial concessions in the Baltics. In the revolution organized with Elizabeth, 308 Guardsmen participated. Among them were only 54 noblemen and any officer. Palace Revolution of 1741. About suspicious meetings of Tsarevna with foreign diplomats, it became known to the ruler, though Elizabeth managed to convince the niece in the innocence it was impossible to hesitate. Here is a picture illustrated a conversation of Elizabeth Petrovna with Guards in Winter Palace. On the night of November of 25 of 1741, Elizabeth personally was to barracks of Preobrazhensky Regiment, also urged soldiers to serve it the same as they served her father. At the head of the Grenadierial Company of the Tsarevna went to the Winter Palace. Here is a picture illustrated as the Palace Revolution and arrest by Elizabeth of Anna Leopoldovna. Palace Revolution, Company of the King ran. Elizabeth, who was not keeping up for soldiers, grenadiers, brought in the palace on shoulders. According to the legend, Elizabeth woke the ruler words, "It is the time to rise up, the sister." Anna Leopoldovna's arrest, Anton Ulrich and Ivan VI passed without resistance. During the revolution of 1741, it was for the first time overthrown lawfully reigning emperor. The revolution of 1741 was made by soldiers guardsmen without participation of guards officers. Unlike other revolutions, a revolution of 1741 had a certain ideological registration. Winners explained their actions with aspiration to rehabilitate daughter of Peter, to revive the greatness of Russia, reached at Peter I, and to save Russia from domination of foreigners. 20 years' reign began Empress Elizabeth Petrovna. Here is a portrait of her, and the motto of his rule was "Everything will be as at the father." With Elizabeth's arrival to the power, the cabinet of ministers was liquidated, restored in the former rights. Also, it is again announced ruling of the Senate are revived, liquidated Erlenberg and Manufacturers Boards. In the decree of February of 25 of 1742, Elizabeth announced the intention and the pleasure that in all our empire was under the grace of our dearest parent, or the sovereign of the Emperor Peter the Great, for what enjoyed to consider all laws issued after 1725 and to cancel those which contradicted the legislation of her father. So we can conclude that Empress Elizabeth Petrovna was rather beautiful. Indeed, Empress Elizabeth, another portrait of her. She was unusually beautiful. It was necessary to be surprised its beauty and majestic bearing. It was the woman of high growth, though very full, but at all from the not losing. She danced in perfection, also differed in special grace in all that did. It would be desirable to watch everything without reducing from its eyes, as there was no subject which to it was made even from Catherine II memoirs about Empress Elizabeth. Another portrait of Empress Elizabeth Petrovna. At the time of Elizabeth was painted between the choice of dresses, balls, masquerades, theatre concerts. To be distracted by public affairs it was simply once, and therefore other important documents remained unconsidered till some months. But at all their inexperience in policy, Elizabeth was ambitious, mistrustful, and suspicious, careful in decision-making. She never put on twice-same dress, and after her death remained 15,000 dresses, part once put on, part not so worn, 2 chests to silk stockings, types, boots, and shoes to several thousands, more than 100 ink-cut pieces of rich French matters. But having made the decision once, she did not change it anymore. Favoritism. In the February decree of 1742, Elizabeth Anglify condemned the favoritism thriving at her predecessors, but also it had favorites. The most well-known favorite of Elizabeth Petrovna was Ukrainian Cossack Alexei Rozum, very poor Ukrainian Cossack Alexei Rozum. With its accession, it became the first grandee in the empire. Over the years, Elizabeth awarded former shepherd Kutring of an Ober-Egersmeister title of a count, awards, and thousands of serfs. In 1742, Elizabeth and Razumovsky secretly got married in church village of Perovo, situated near Moscow. Fantastic eminence did not spoil Razumovsky. In it there was neither Menshikov's greed nor Buron's love of power. The former Ukrainian Cossack remained the complacent and generous person. He was too lazy to interfere with public affairs, preferring to enjoy wealth and comfort. Razumovsky always remembered about the origin and willingly helped fellow countrymen. Favoritism. Younger brother of Alexei Razumovsky, Kirill made even more fantastic career. In 1742, 14 years old teenager, it was brought to the yard and sent a year later to study abroad. Kirill returned to Russia in 2 years, having taken a sciences course in Königsberg, Berlin, and Strasbourg. In 1746, 18 years old, he was appointed the president of St. Petersburg Academy of Sciences, in the reasoning of the special ability seen in it and the art acquired as sciences. At the end of the 1740s of Razumovsky and Elizabeth environment, Shuvalov began to restrict. Actual head domestic policy became Peter Ivanovich Shuvalov, whose eminence was promoted by a marriage and entrusted Empress Maid of Honor Shepeleva's move. Ivan Shuvalov, rather poor cousin of powerful grandees, became Elizabeth's favorite in 1749 when he was 18 years old and the Empress 39 years old. Ivan Shuvalov, the most surprising among favorites of the Russian monarchs. He only did not look for rings, neither rings, nor awards, nor wealth, even did not receive any title. The highest rise of Mikhail and Alexei Shuvalov is connected with the favor of their cousin Ivan Shuvalov. 7 Years' War. Participation of Russia in 7 Years' War unnecessary for our country. It held from 1756 to 1763, was the main event of foreign policy of Elizabeth. She was involved in war two coalitions of powers, first Prussia, England and Portugal, and the second France, Spain, Austria, Sweden, Saxony, on which side Russia was. In battles of 7 Years' War, Peter Rumyantsev and Alexander Suvorov won the first victories. In 1760, the Russian troops captured Berlin. However, victories of Russians did not yield to the country results. At Peter III's succession, Russia made the peace with Prussia and returned it all one territories. The victory of England over France in fight for colonies was the main result of war. Successor of throne. Almost at once, Elizabeth took out accession from Goldstein's nephew, Karl Peter Ulrich, Anna Petrovna's son. According to a testament of Catherine, he had more rights for a throne than Elizabeth. Early the deserted Karl Peter Ulrich was brought up counting on the introduction of a Swedish throne. Peter I's grandson was also a grandnephew of Karl XII. Emperor Peter III reigned only 186 days. Here is a portrait of him. Being afraid that the nephew will become the king of Sweden and will raise a claim on the Russian throne, Elizabeth hurried to bring it to Russia and to proclaim him the successor of the throne. Grand Duke Peter Fedorovich. Karl Peter Ulrich was baptized in Orthodoxy and he began to be called as Peter Fedorovich, and also he lost the rights to the Swedish throne. The successor disappointed Elizabeth. He was lazy, undeveloped, infantile, openly disraised Russia, Orthodoxy, but idolized Prussia and her King Frederick II. But other successor in Elizabeth was not. Peter was the last representative of dynasty of Romanov, at least in the female line. Here is a portrait of imperial couple, Peter Fedorovich and Grand Duchess Catherine Alexeyevna. Elizabeth picked up the nephew, the bride, the engraved Serbsky Princess Sofia Augustus Frederick. In 1745, the 14-year-old girl arrived to Russia, also remarried her forever. She remained here forever, having accepted a new name, Catherine Alexeyevna, future Russian Empress Catherine II. Young spouses were people deeply allying each other. Peter still played at soldiers, and Catherine in 15 years read serious philosophical and political books. Domestic policy of Peter III. The most important document of reign of Peter III became published on February of 1762, the Manifesto about talent and liberty to the Russian nobility. Noblemen acquired the right to leave their resignation from military and state service, and with increase in a rank to first rank. Retired could, at desire, come back to work, go to arrive in service to other states. Children of noblemen were obliged to get an education, but upon completion of it had the right to solve independently whether to arrive them on service. Peter III abolished secret office. It was at the same time recommended. The use of these words, secret service, was forbidden, and violators needed to be punished. Peter III stopped prosecution of dissenters. He issued a decree of laicization or secularization of church lands and their transfer in order of border economy. The decree was sent to the Senate about the equation of all religions. Peter III even sent the decree ruling to shave to Orthodox priests' beards to the synod and to put the frock coats instead of cassocks. Plot against Peter III was organized. Against Peter III, his wife Catherine the future Catherine II, these days Catherine Alexeyevna, used the growing irritation. After accession to the throne, Peter, earlier not getting on with the wife, openly preferred it to favorite Elizabeth Vorontsova. Catherine could be afraid seriously of a divorce and expulsion from Russia and even the conclusion to the monastery. Meanwhile, Catherine managed to start broad communication and among dignitaries and among wards officers. Catherine, clever, persistent, imperious, long ago deeply depriving the husband, actually headed a plot against him. Orlov brothers became her support. The senior from Grigory was Catherine's favorite. An active role in a plot was played by successor tutor Nikita Panin and Elizabeth Vorontsova's sister, Princess Catherine Dashkova. The Hetman of Ukraine, Kirill Razumovsky, supported conspirators. On June 28 of 1762, when Peter III, the in Petikov conspirators lifted Quartz regiments, also proclaimed Catherine the Empress. Peter was given abdicated practically at once, also asked to release him only in Goldstein in Germany. Peter III's death. Peter III was arrested and contained under protection in the Lock of Ropsch. On July of 17, Peter died. The chief security guard Alexei Orlov wrote Catherine that everything left accidentally. He began to argue at table with the Prince Fedor. We did not manage to separate and him and did not become. But the day before he wrote other note, our freak very much got sick. Kind of this day or did not die at night. Historians guess only about that Catherine ordered to kill the husband or colleagues guessed her unexpressed desire. Here is a portrait of Catherine II, Empress of all the Russia. Having overthrown Peter III, Catherine did not wish to become regent at the juvenile son Paul and itself as candidate to a throne. The rights of the Empress were extremely doubtful. It did not belong to Romanov's dynasty. Having used it, the prominent diplomat and the participant of the revolution, Nikita Panin, tried to limit the monarchical power. Panin prepared and submitted the project of creation of imperial council from 7-8 dignitaries invested by trust to the monarch, which had to operate the country. Catherine II provided senatorial reform. In 1763, a reform of the Senate is undertaken. The Senate is divided into 6 departments, headed by chief prosecutors. Each of them received accurately outlined circle of powers. The Senate turned into the supreme executive and judicial power, knowing current affairs. Especially the role increased of general prosecutor. He bore personal responsibility before the Empress, constantly reported on her to the decisions made in the Senate. Secularization of church lands. Having come to the throne, Catherine II cancelled the secularization proclaimed by Peter III. However, in February of 1764, the decree of secularization is again issued. All monastery and cathedral lands were transferred in Board of Economy. Monasteries received state contents according to class. From 954 great Russian monasteries, 569 are abolished and 161 is taken off the payroll. By 1801, in all empire, from 172 monasteries, only 452 remained. Destruction of Getmanstvo in Ukraine. In 1764, Catherine accepted resignation of the last Getman of Ukraine, Kirill Razumovsky. Getmanstvo was cancelled in Ukraine. The Governorate General is founded, led by Rumyantsev. Catherine believed that management of the central Russia and suburbs has to be based uniformly. These provinces it is necessary to bring to that they became Russified and would cease to look as wolves in the wood. Decision on development of the code. Catherine conducted constant correspondence with the French philosophers Voltaire, Diderot, D'Alembert. Inspired by their doctrine, it undertook the solution of a grandiose task which was not managed to be solved neither Peter nor Elizabeth, drawing up the new code. The late Commission and Order. For development of the code, Catherine in 1767 called the late Commission. Previously it prepared order to deputies on which worked during 1764-1766. The treatise was taken as a basis of order of Charles Montesquieu about spirit of laws from order. The purpose of the power, not in that to take away their natural liberty from people, but that they meant to direct action to receiving the most bigger from all she is kind. The late Commission. Opening on the late Commission took place on July the 30th of 1767 in Facade Chamber of the Moscow Kremlin. 564 deputies from them, officials 19, noblemen 205, citizens 174, without citizen noblemen, state peasants 71, Cossacks 44, foreigners 54. The late Commission. Catherine II apparently considered that without legislative mitigation of the serfdom and without declaration class rights not privileged of the population, new code it will be useless and even harmful. At the end of 1768, she dismissed the late Commission under the pretext of the begun war with Turkey. Reforms should be carried out in other ways. Restriction of serfdom. Failure of the late Commission did not force Catherine to refuse reforms. In 1771, the Queen forbade to trade in peasants from auctions. In 1773, the Senate forbade application of a whip, having replaced it with lashes. After the Pugachev's rebellion, it was possible to hope that the nobility will not begin to oppose to reforms. In March of 1775, the manifesto which forbade to make peasants as serfs again released peasants is published. Now they are told to be written down in merchants on narrow-mindedness. Revolt under the leadership of Yemelyan Pugachev, the largest in the Russian history. In historiography, revolt often is called peasant war. The revolt captured territorial area of the Volga region. It frightened a ruling lawyer, having it used to strengthen the political system. As a result of Pugachev's revolt, provincial reform was provided. Russia was divided into 50 provinces, each of which in turn of 10-15 counties with a population to 30,000 people. 300,000-400,000 souls of the male tax population had to live in each province. The governor was at the head of the province. He was appointed personally by the empress and was subordinated directly to her. The governor in the province possessed the completeness of the power. For providing an order, all military units and teams in provinces were subordinated to the governor. And a great task for you, please read our textbook, The Cambridge History of Russia, about the foreign policy of Catherine II and about the domestic and foreign policy of her son Paul I, and about the tragic destiny of Paul I, about his death as a result of co-opted in 1801. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions left? So, I ask chiefs of your groups to send me lists of present students. If you have no questions, so goodbye and good luck. Be healthy. You have a question about prominent diplomat. Prominent diplomat? What do you mean, prominent diplomat? Prominent diplomat. Prominent state official, maybe. Gregory Potemkin. Yes, Gregory Potemkin. He was a favorite of Catherine II. Prominent diplomat. not Gregory Potemkin. Gregory Potemkin was a favorite of Catherine II. It's interesting, whom are you talking? Maybe prominent diplomat, maybe Panin, Nikita Panin. Prominent Russian statesman. Goodbye. Thank you for your questions.